get there in a second. Anyway, welcome guys. Welcome back for a panel on RoboAdvisors and Investing. So this one does have a unifying umbrella, and we've actually got 5 people on this one, so get ready for a treat. We'll have a lot of different views of it and how to approach that situation and how different firms have decided to do so. So in just a moment, we will be able to start the presentation.
There you go.
Good. I think we're happening now. Perfect. So up first, we got Brad Walker of Income and
yes.
Got it.
Yes.
I got that one.
Good job. Nice. Okay, so I'm Brad Walker, and I'm the CEO of InCommand. We have a big problem in our country. 10,000 people are retiring every day for the next 15 years. And these are our parents, our grandparents, and maybe even some of you. And while the baby boomer generation is huge and has amassed a large amount of wealth, they don't have access to the investments that they need to live a comfortable retirement. Yields on traditional low-risk fixed income are at historical lows. And so they're actively looking for something that has higher yields but is safe. On the other side, we have a great opportunity coming out of the financial crisis. The agencies, Fannie and Freddie, had their credit box shrunk, and the private securitization market on Wall Street has not reformed. So there's a whole bunch of lenders that are trying to cover the non-conforming mortgage market, non-conforming borrowers, but they lost their windows for liquidity. They lost their place to sell loans. And so that's where we fit in. You know, we can offer the product that the baby boomers are looking for to help support comfortable retirement, and we can become that window of liquidity for the mortgage market that's covering the high credit non-conforming space. We do that through what we call a PRIMO, or prime-rated individual mortgage-backed obligation. So we set out to build a product that we would be comfortable selling to our own parents, one that's safe and has a great return of about 6%. And so what is a PRIMO? A PRIMO is a security that's backed by a single high credit non-conforming mortgage. And as an investor, you can buy into any one PRIMO in increments as low as $100, and it gives you a higher yield and monthly income. And for the originators, it gives them that window for liquidity that they've been looking for. So they asked us to talk about our journey here. So this is about 3 years in abridged format. So I pitched this idea of InCommand really early to a VC, probably way too early. And they actually told us that we would need a blanket exemption from the SEC to do this. And I was a little naive and excited, so I decided, how hard can that be? And so I started talking to lobbyists in DC. That led to conversations with 2 ex-SEC commissioners who loved the idea and couldn't see a reason why we couldn't do it. So I went home and put together my team, and after that we interviewed 9 different securities law firms. And we found the right partner in Sidley Austin, and they helped us navigate the entire regulatory environment. After that, we started looking for off-the-shelf software that could handle what we were trying to do. And even with marketplace lending kind of booming, we actually couldn't find anything off the shelf. So we built our back-end and accounting system from scratch. And at the same time, we developed our front-end user interface to make it simple, regardless of people's sophistication, for them to understand what PRIMOs they want and how to actually look at them. And then after that, we put together our ecosystem. So people in the origination space, third-party vendors, and early investors. And so we've been live for the last year in a beta mode, and right now we're getting ready to scale the business. So successes and failures. I think when you're creating a financial product or fintech in general, the regulatory environment can be pretty daunting, and it's really important to make sure you're on the right side of that. So that was one of our big successes, I think, finding the right partner to help us with that. Building partnerships, and that can be frustrating because anytime you're working with larger businesses, there's a lot of hurrying up and wait. But you know, we were able to bring in the partners that we needed. And then the biggest success is getting to market, which we launched last May. The failures or the challenges, I think, are probably not uncommon to startups, but we had to let one of our co-founders go, which is a painful decision. You always start this with the best intentions in mind, and everything's going to work out. But you know, it's really important to recognize when a change needs to be made. Setting expectations, I think, internally as a team, at the beginning it's really easy to make failures because you think everything's going to go really smoothly, and this is really about managing morale. So learning to set better expectations. And then due diligence. There are times where we've had somebody who's an expert tell us that we're going to have to do something, and if you listen to them without corroborating that or doing your own research, you can delay yourself or go down the wrong path. So I guess the key learnings that we put together for anyone else that wants to do this is things will take longer than you expect. You have to just keep fighting through that. Don't waste time with people that promise you the moon because they almost never produce anything. Talk to everyone and anyone who's willing to listen. The conversations that you think are a waste of time many times can be the best conversations you have. You never know who someone knows. Don't let the highs get too high or the lows get too low. Don't let your team ride the morale roller coaster. Just ride the middle. Team commitment and chemistry is critical to success. So if you feel like someone on your team is not right, you're better off making that change as soon as possible, and you won't regret it. And then recognize and celebrate your success. When you're a founder and you're working, it's always the next deliverable. It gets very myopic. Sometimes it's important to step back and look at the body of work that you've created, and you'll shock yourself, and it helps you to move forward. So I'm Brad in command. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yep. So next up, we have Navin. Yeah, Navin Maganti from Decision Hawk. Great name. He's flipping it again, so what do you do? We hit escape. How do we get out of here? Yeah, again, let's give a little drill on getting out of one presentation because the typical escape button is not working. Why is it not doing that? We'll get there. Just give us a moment.
There we go. So which one's yours? Decision one? Yeah.
You got it?
Okay, thanks. Clicker?
Yeah.
Right, left.
Should, we should, okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. My name is Navin Maganti from Decision Hawk. And I would like to thank Michael. Actually, we met him at Lendit, and thankfully we're here to present. And I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about our journey so far. So I guess first let's talk a little bit about small business finance and the state of small business finance. And really, this is a survey that came out in 2016 from the Fed in New York. But the key thing here is not the numbers, but if you look at the criteria to say what are the types of financial challenges and what are the responses small businesses take in the US today. So this is really from they either cannot pay the debt that they have, they either have to cut staff, or they cannot pay themselves. This is the state of small business finances, depending on whatever challenges they have. So what is our underlying premise? The underlying premise is, as a small business, the most important thing that you would have to do is make a series of decisions. And this is true for small, growing, medium-sized businesses. And that decides the fate of your business. It's clearly tied to your own personal fate as well. So that's really our premise to how to solve that problem. So what we look at is, when you look at a business, it really has a bunch of inflection points. The starting thing is we form a business, then there's the growth of the business, there's sustaining the business, and there are multiple business challenges that you get along. And really all the entrepreneurs or small business owners think of business in this form, and all the decisions are made in that context. As a result of that, you need to make certain decisions. How do I fund my company? Debt, equity, which is the best way. Should I buy or lease my assets? Do I have the right coverage? Do I have the right advice for myself, whether it's a CPA, whether it's an accountant, bookkeeper? And this is just a financial gamut of decisions. You have the insurance decisions, you have the HR operational decisions, everything that you need to think about. So our goal at Decision Hawk is to make businesses and entrepreneurs successful by providing solutions in the finance and business and insurance space. And we don't want to make decisions just based on emotions and what are the people we know, but through data-driven decisions. And basically, we want to be a partner along their entire journey, right, from starting an idea all the way from them scaling a successful business. And for the finance and insurance vendors, we want them to be able to serve the needs and growth of this small businesses and entrepreneurs that exist in Main Street America. So what's our journey so far? In 2007, we actually launched our first consulting company that is based around operations consulting, that we help large Fortune 1000 organizations and government organizations, telling them how to improve our business, improve their business. And
What do we got going on?
it says battery's low.
The screen is still good.
Okay. So coming out of that, what we realized is small businesses don't have access to these resources that the large institutions have, either of capital, either of skilled people. So what we said was we want to translate our experience in 2016, and we launched a pilot for about 6 to 9 months with different types of entrepreneurs, single real estate entrepreneurs, doctors, and small business owners that are running retail businesses to say, could they use this platform? And we went about 8 months building this, working with them to identify what would be their needs and pain points, and how could we best serve them. So we launched in March 2017 and landed, and our focus initially is to launch on the finance and insurance space. And now we're focused on customer acquisition, partner acquisition, capital raising. The key thing here being we are a marketplace that serves both sides, both the entrepreneurs and the marketplace that is looking to serve these smaller business entrepreneurs. So where are we headed? Right now, after launching our platform in the next few months, we're launching a bunch of decision apps and decision bots through different channels where the customers can reach us and the vendors can reach their customers as well. We're talking about vertical expansion because what we find is, depending on the industry, whether you're a retail company, you're a small growing consulting company, or technology company, you find that you have different challenges as the decisions, the way you make it. And there's industry expansion, obviously. So what are the takeaways? We launched the platform, and what we find is the sophistication of small business. Since we've seen all these lending platforms come up in the last 5 years, you'd think that everyone is very sophisticated. But we find out that we meet most of our customers at small business expos. It's harder to find them online than in person. They may be available by mail, not by actually being online and finding business like this. So customer acquisition is a challenge. The next thing is information availability. Large businesses have large data warehouses of all this information that they can use to make a decision. How does small business make an empirical data decision? They don't have access to that. That means I've been calling people like the New York Fed, the Philly Fed, to get access to their data and provide it in a context that small businesses can understand and actually apply it to their daily problems. And finally, it comes to object and unbiased nature. Since we are a marketplace, we're providing you best matches for lenders, for CPA, CFO services, insurance companies. How do we still remain objective and unbiased and not appear like anyone else, whether it's a Cabbage or Lending Tree, who actually have some of these things, but they're providing the base to sell their product. But we are trying to service the small business customer. Those are some of the challenges and learnings that we've had along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Good. So now we would have Perry Rahbar or Rahbar?
You got it.
Rahbar, the last one, right? Gotcha. So DV01?
DV01.
DV01, got it. Okay.
Spelled 01.
Yeah, 01. Okay, thank you. And I think we're ready to roll.
Okay. Thank you. Where's the clock, by the way?
Oh, the clock right there.
You're the clock?
That's
All
the
right.
clock, yeah.
Started
Let's
right.
give you the look. There's
Hi,
one on the
everyone.
screen, too, so.
Shocked this many people are still here. So a quick summary on DV01. So DV01 is a reporting and analytics platform that brings institutional investors transparency into the consumer lending markets. And we started with all the online marketplace lenders like a Lending Club, SoFi, and so forth. So what I just said is very niche, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what the hell it all means and how we even got here. So let me focus on the journey. So I remember this. I was a mortgage trader at Bear Stearns on the non-agency mortgage desk when the firm went down. I worked there for a number of years right out of college. Went over to JP Morgan in the merger. And I remember that Friday in March when Bear went down, I was asked to stick around with one of the heads of the mortgage department to figure out what our total exposure was across the firm. And we were supposedly known for our great risk management, but apparently all our systems were spitting out different numbers, and I was there till 3 in the morning just trying to figure out how much exposure we had, and it was a maze of spreadsheets. It was a total disaster. The battery's really low on this thing.
You got to get that fixed.
So that was something that stayed with me for some time. I went over to JP Morgan, continued on there for 5 years, and then left to do something totally different. I was done with trading and wanted to learn something new. And I ventured out of finance and towards the tech world, and that's when I came across marketplace lending, and in particular a small company at the time called Lending Home. Started working with them and giving them some advice. And I'd say this is, one piece of advice, go with what you know. And at first I resisted it because I didn't want to go back into finance. I was supposedly done with that. But, there's something to be said when you have a really niche skill that you could now combine with some other stuff and really make something new and bring two worlds together. And that's kind of what we're doing at DV01. We got started when working with Lending Home. I realized that a lot of these new marketplace lenders really, they were really new and innovative on the consumer side of the equation, but when dealing with the capital markets, you're dealing with the same old institutions that were doing things the same old ways that they were doing it in the financial crisis, particularly around the data and the reporting and the transparency that investors had into these transactions. We felt it was a great opportunity to build a new infrastructure from the ground up, connect with all these originators, normalize all their data, and then handle anything else that comes downstream, whether it's securitizations, loan purchases, and all the reporting and analytics that goes on top of that. In many ways, most of these markets, it's shocking when people think of, in some parts of the world where we're talking about AI, self-driving cars, and then when you're in finance, you're talking about a lot of traders still doing analysis in Excel. And that's primarily what we're trying to combat, is getting all this data from these massive markets out of archaic databases and Excel spreadsheets. And so that's what we're doing. Building this from the ground up, replacing a lot of these fragmented workflows, some really old companies in here as well, and also real old ways of doing things. So we started in October 2014. We've now connected with most of the online lending world, have about 55 billion in assets on the platform. We do reporting across a number of securitizations, a number of different asset classes, consumer unsecured mortgages, autos, small business, student loans as well, and are working with all the major different lenders and institutional investors. So pain points. Sales in this space is tough. You're, especially as a startup and dealing with some of these massive institutions, you're on a really tight schedule. Oh, and this just died. You're on your schedule and they're on no schedule. And oftentimes that could be really frustrating for a startup. So, having a good grasp of the sales cycle is really important. I'd say another thing, particularly when you're in the capital market space, I think you're dealing with really niche markets and educating, whether it's your customers, potential investors, or even your team, and really making it clear. Do you guys want to just? I'm fine without
keep talking, yeah.
But
It's going to take a minute, probably.
it's fine. Really the education that's, required within the institution with your clients and so forth is really tough. And to the girl that was up here earlier talking about the blockchain company, even, finance people are not the most, the biggest visionaries and the most creative. So explaining your product is one thing, but really getting in front of them and, and being able to show them what you built is really key. Let's see. Yeah, this one point is really key. Starting a company is no small task, and I think oftentimes in today's environment, being an entrepreneur has been, it's like this mythical job that's so incredible, and it's really not most of the time. It's really tough, and there's so many different things that you have to deal with. You have to really be committed to what you're doing, and really passionate about it and believe in it, and also have a real long time horizon. And this is kind of to my point earlier. When I left finance initially, I had an idea that I wanted to build a book discovery platform. What the hell does a bond trader know about book discovery in the publishing world? And eventually it came around to, taught me some great things about the tech world, but eventually, you got to find what you are uniquely good at, some special knowledge that you have, and then combine that with some other things that, you're picking up along the way that really, bring these worlds together and make a strong value proposition. And hire the best people that you could find, and that is such an important thing early on. I think oftentimes, entrepreneurs want to be super controlling and they think that they have to win it on their own, but really it's your team, and that's the best thing that you could do. If ultimately you could hire really smart people and do nothing yourself, you've won. And I'll leave you with that.
Thanks very much. So next we've got Jane Barratt of GoldBean. And we've actually got power too, so that's good. We contacted Ryan from Right Grid and got that used to.
Where's the clicker?
You got the clicker, Barry?
You still got the clicker?
I put it, it's back there.
All right.
Forward, back, laser.
Okay, I won't be lasering.
Just in case you want to.
Way to stay cool as people are leaning over you, Perry. Nicely done. I'm Jane Barratt. I'm the founder and CEO of GoldBean. Thank you to Columbia for hosting us and hosting me here today. One of the things that's rarely talked about in fintech forums is the fact that a vast majority of this country can't get together $400 to pay an emergency bill, right? We're in credit card distress, people are highly leveraged, but what's happened is that we now have 2, if not 3 generations of people who have been programmed from birth with the consumption mindset. My grandparents' generation had a growth mindset. In many parts of Asia, you're fundamentally born with a growth mindset. You take something and you make more of it. In our weird Western world, we work really hard to buy stuff. And now it's experiences, but it's still, we earn to spend. And the core mission of GoldBean is to try and change people's mindset from a consumption mindset into a growth mindset. And how we do this, so we are technically an algorithm-driven advisor. We have a full suite of services driven by APIs, as well as content that we license into financial institutions to basically turn savers into investors. Like, that's the core thing that people actually get, but it's much bigger than that. It is really trying to get, people's minds working differently. And the way that it works, our unique IP, is that for most humans, they're not born understanding what investing means. And the financial services industry does an incredible job of obfuscation. It's way too complicated for you people. You shouldn't be doing this for yourself. God forbid you buy yourself a stock. That would be crazy, trust me. The problem with that is unless you've got at least $250,000, they're not interested in you. So you've got the double whammy of messages out there saying, trust a professional, talk to an advisor. And on the other hand, the world is delicious and there's so many distractions and my money's come in and it's going to go out again. We have a severe case of lifestyle inflation in this country and in many others. So the GoldBean IP basically says, show me where you shop and I'll build your portfolio. Right? Because guess what? $500 billion is spent every year putting brands into our heads around the world, right? We understand brands, we understand companies, we understand products. We don't understand low-cost ETF, index fund, mutual fund. Like, they are not words that are taught in school, they're not talked about within the family. And so the core mission of GoldBean is we are an education-first advisor. We lead with education, we connect you as a consumer to investment opportunities. We are an RIA, so when we put together a portfolio, it still has a core base of low-cost ETFs, but we say, hey, you spend a lot of money at Amazon. Everyone spends a lot of money at Amazon. They actually rate like this is a stock, here's stocks that people like you like, and here's some stocks from your own spending that are interesting. And so it's just a way to get people started and then engage in them and drip feed over time. And so, again, bringing a much different experience to the financial institutions than what currently exists. Because right now, you have marketing over here, driving leads. You have product over here, which is like, please buy some more stocks, we need the trade lift. And there's very little actual engagement and education in the middle. So the genesis story of GoldBean is I have been in digital since the mid-90s. I've worked with financial institutions all over the world, building digital products, doing digital marketing. And I was always on the other side of the table saying, why don't you all just change your tagline to give us your money boomers? And then the joke back was like, well, that's where all the money is. So, like, what about younger people? What about women? What about people of color? What about everyone but the old white dude in the ad that you have walking down the beach looking self-satisfied? You realize what's happening here. And they would always give the same answer, which is, we would love to make those initiatives work. It's one of our top strategic priorities. We just can't make the economics work. I was like, well, of course you can't make the economics work. You work on AUM. So the genesis story of GoldBean is that I took the time I'd spent in the marketing world, in the digital world, and really, turned it into a product that leverages people's insights. I also had another sort of fundamental truth in that I started my career in Asia. I spent 7 years in Asia. I've been in the US for 13 years. And in my time in Asia, I unlearned all my weird Western ways with money. Like, when you're around the Chinese culture, it's absolutely kind of mandatory to talk about money, how much you earn, how much you spend, where's the money going. And at the beginning, it was horrifying and incredibly confronting. And by the end, I'm like, this is great. I actually have transparency. I sort of know where I should be in life. And when I moved to New York, and I moved here as a boss, so it wasn't like I was sort of looking uphill, my peers were basically financially illiterate, earning mid-six figures. It's, what are you investing in? Where does your money go? And I would get this. And so I was like genuinely taken aback and took it upon myself to become an unofficial advisor. And after giving great speeches over time and them going nowhere, I'm like, I'm going to just build something that addresses this core issues. So some of the pain points along the way, I think the undertaking of building out a technology product from scratch, and it was very important for us to own the IP because it was always going to be a licensed business. Building a technology platform from scratch, we built out a content platform. It's about 150,000 words. We have like 6 hours of video content on lynda.com. Like, the content platform's as complex as the software platform. So we were building out the platform, we were raising money, and we were getting registered with the SEC and doing all of the FINRA certifications at the same time. So that, in hindsight, was insane. It has been just as difficult post-launch, but the real pain point was I wish we'd sort of stretched things out and sequenced them a little bit better. In terms of successes and failures, we have had success in securing core partnerships. We have a partnership with Fiserv, who have 14,000 banks and credit unions as their clients. So as a distribution channel, that's great. We have some direct relationships with banks. In terms of failures, I think having less understanding of how long things take and how much things cost was probably the biggest one, and every entrepreneur says that, but it's like you always think things will be done faster and cost less than they actually are, and also underestimating the sales cycle. Even though I work with institutions for 20 years, the sales cycle is extraordinarily painful. So in terms of lessons learned, I think there is a tendency, as Perry said, entrepreneurship is seen as something cool, and there is now an entire culture of corporate innovation tourism where you get just like these people who, this is really cool what you do. I'm like, yes, it is. You should talk to Bob. What does Bob do? I know he'll love this. And so you go down these rabbit holes that potentially lead absolutely nowhere. So Innovation tourism is something that I've learned to sniff out. And then the second big thing is just to be much more ruthless on math, and especially while fundraising. Because if the average VC has a requirement from their LPs and GPs that they invest in 1 in every 400 companies they see, the math does not work for entrepreneurs. You really need to look at, different ways of raising that don't involve you having mathematically, 30,000 meetings. So that's GoldBean. I'm Jane Barratt. It's great to be here. I'd love to talk to you later. Thank you.
And now we've got Richard Rothenberg of Global AI.
Yours was a lot smoother than mine. Just talk. You time now, computer. Forward, back, laser.
All right. Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Richard Rothenberg, CEO of Global AI. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Michael Baxter, for the invitation. So I'm going to talk about our journey as a company. And I would like to start with the origins. So our project basically originated from committee that Dr. Langweber from the Berkeley Lab, one of the world's largest supercomputing laboratories, created to help government agencies better understand the flash crash and the systemic risks arising from phenomena such as the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, which have tremendous socioeconomic costs all over the world and tremendous implications for investors. So for this purpose, a team was created of several PhD scientists and quantitative practitioners in the industry. And at the time, I was an algorithmic trader at Deutsche Bank and had the opportunity to understand the importance of these issues, which led to the creation of our platform, which we essentially found was that there's tremendous challenges in the financial industry in terms of big data, many factors, whether macroeconomic, political, etc., affecting investments. AI was a major issue because we found that a lot of the existing solutions were aimed at the retail traders or very short time frequencies, whereas institutional investors tend to look at periods of months or even years ahead. So all the talk about machine learning and AI was not very relevant for them. So we decided to create this platform and curate, based on our team's experience at top hedge funds and banks, to create a platform where we basically incorporate the key pieces of the investment workflow for investors, all the way from security selection to portfolio construction and creation of alpha factors using state-of-the-art research and techniques. So I would like to talk about challenges we have over the way. One of the main challenges was to make the connection between global risks and long-term investments. So we found, after talking to more than 100 portfolio managers at large institutions, that their concerns go beyond mere financials, looking at a balance sheet. People are concerned about politics. People are concerned about central bank intervention. People are concerned about climate risks, among others. Then, after looking deeper into this, we found that, for example, pollution and carbon emissions has a cost over 10% of GDP in China. Well, that's a big number. Then we found that 30% of the world GDP is exposed to climate risk, and that has interlinkages to food security and massive migration flows. So then we proceeded to quantify these factors on the long term using techniques such as natural language processing and incorporate them into how that affects GDP, how carbon emissions, how multiple factors connect. And then we created back testing on these factors to see if there was an implication for performance. And we found that incorporating some of these factors have a significant positive impact on investment performance. And this is very important because we're talking about the largest institutional investors in the world, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds. We're talking that, what I'm saying is that things like a stable political system, climate risk, a good macroeconomic stability has a positive impact on their investments. And this is also relevant for governments because giving enough importance to these factors and improvement the business climate in the countries can help them attract further investments. So then another pinpoint in the journey was, well, okay, well, this is a little niche. There's not much talk about this. So where do we find the right partners besides where our team came from at the Berkeley Lab? And we were very surprised that we found incredible support at the United Nations Global Compact and PRI because there's a major move right now to find ways to quantify this risk, like climate risk, and enable sustainable investment so that we invest in a responsible way at the institutional level. SAP Next Gen is a new center that was recently started a collaboration. They're purely focused on the Sustainable Development Goals, and that was surprising. And this project has led us to participate in the next phase of the IBM Watson X Prize competition. And some takeaways is that I believe that people is number one, whether you're clients, partners, or advisors. And therefore, finding the right team, I think, is the most important thing. I like to think that we can always learn off of failures and always stay humble, stay hungry, keep learning, and do something that we're passionate about. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Questions, yeah. Yeah, Q&A, right. So now, actually, this time we got the Q&A directly after the panel, so why don't the hands go up and we can ask some questions?
Thank you for the amazing panel. I have a question for Jane. I have been in wealth management industry in Asia for 7 years, also get involved in here a little bit. Just wondering, what do you think, or what is the best approach to get international robo-advisor to service the immigrants or international clients here? And another question is, it's like, what do you think this kind of platform can service the high net worth or help the low-income groups?
Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, if there's one thing we've learned is, honestly, it's the financial health of the household that you grow up in. That's not necessarily about your wealth. It's, are there good lessons shared? You know, we meet many financially unhealthy rich people, let's say. So there is no one best way to invest. I think there's a great set it and forget it. Many people prefer to have a human holding their hands. But for a robo approach, and we have had this validated with research, to be able to be transparent around why things are recommended, what the words mean, how much it costs, and what to expect, and then keep on engaging, like that is modern, you know, it's regardless of category, that's modern service. So we believe that it will be digital-enabled advice will win long-term, whether it's digital only or digital plus human. We are focused squarely on the nascent investor, so it's not for wealthy people. But very weirdly, in research, our approach does resonate very well with more affluent people. For your immigrants into America, how to service them, so, or do you mean people offshore? Both? It's very tricky with the regulatory environment. So from an advisory perspective, there's great brokerage platforms like Drive Wealth, which are amazing for offshore people to invest in the US, but from an advisory perspective, it's a little trickier.
Hello, my name is Nyat, and I am at a family office firm. So I have a question for Jane regarding the kind of digital advising and education platform. So as you said that like there are a lot of people who have less than a couple of $1 million or like $500,000, they would not have the ability to approach to a bigger banks because they have a much higher foundation, like the higher barrier to enter. Though there are a lot of other like small family office that offer for a smaller range of assets. And so how is your company different from other family office, and how, beside the education platform, and how is that disrupting the whole financial market?
So, I mean, family offices aren't even in our landscape. We're talking to people with, you know, $500, $5,000, $10,000. So way out of the range of any sort of family office service. But I think how we differ from other advisors is most algorithm-driven advisors, the ultimate product is ETFs, and sometimes as few as like 7 ETFs. So a different combination of these ETFs is your portfolio. We lead with equities, which is very different in the advisory, in the robo world. We're education first, so we actually want people to learn, and we don't charge on assets under management. So I don't care if you give me $500 or $50,000, it's a flat fee. So again, obviously our institutional partners care a lot more about the assets coming in, but it's very hard to say, we want everyone to get better with their money, but only if you have $250,000 and above. So it's much more of, I mean, our mission is financial inclusion from less of the extreme poor, but more about the working poor, if that makes sense.
So question to Perry and Brad. What are we doing differently, because they're both doing analytics on investments. What are we doing differently to prevent what happened with all of the bad algorithms and fraudulent ratings that caused the meltdown of the CDOs?
Who wants to take that?
He's more on the analytics side. It sounds like we're creating the product. So the way that we're doing it is kind of taking the original model and flipping it on its head. You know, the lack of transparency in those products was one of the biggest problems. It was opaque. You put a bunch of stuff in a fund and considered it diversified and safe. What we do is we take every mortgage that we securitize into a primo and we give people full view into all of the underwriting of that. So you can see, you know, the FICO score, you can see the down payment, you can see their debt to income, and then even more detail with why did they take out the loan? Did they refi it and take cash out? And so it can be somewhat complex, but our idea is to just make it as transparent as possible. That's the best way we think to fight against that. And then, you know, the challenge that other people talked about there is making it accessible and educating people to come in, because it is somewhat complex. But we think the transparency of it and then the ability to customize as you're comfortable is the best way in.
Yeah, there wasn't really many fancy algorithms back then. That don't give people too much credit. It was just really more just pure stupidity. But yeah, there was a lot of transparency issues, amongst other things for sure. And Brad, you know, they're offering their product and making it very transparent. What we're doing is we kind of sit in between. And your customers are retail?
Yeah, retail.
Retail. So we're focused on the institutional markets. So, you know, a lot of these platforms started out as, you know, offering a loan, selling the loan to another individual, and then very quickly, so that was the peer-to-peer model, and then very quickly it really grew to just capital markets business. So now, you know, SoFi, you see a lot of their commercials, and they're doing a lot of stuff to colleges, but SoFi is one of the biggest securitizers out there, both on the student loan side, now on the personal loan side, and then soon on the mortgage side. And so, you know, we connect with all these various lenders, ingest all their data, understand everything they're doing, and then we we kind of put it through a process which normalizes it so it's all apples to apples against everyone else's, but we also put a ton of data and integrity checks into the mix. So just when you see stuff that's not kosher, because loans never get serviced the right way, that we're able to identify those loans, bring it up with people, and then it just inserts a lot more transparency and confidence into the process. And so a lot of these securitizations that were done, in many ways, these online lenders get a lot more scrutiny just because they're new and less, they have less of a track record. But if you look at the process end to end, from how they're originating, the data they make available, and then how their transactions sit in the capital markets when we're reporting on them, it's way cleaner and more transparent than some of the other asset classes. And hopefully, the goal is to scale it.
Yeah, I had a question for Perry and Navin about who are selling to businesses. So how do you guys think about pricing, subscription models, single pricing, so forth? How are you guys sort of noodling through that?
Yeah, it's the thing that's particularly frustrating about where we sit is that you see the volumes, like the sizes, like all these clients have billions of dollars of risk, it's trillions of dollars, and they're the cheapest people in the world. It's insane. And the lawyers somehow get paid all the money. But I think what you have to do, and what we've tried to do is, especially right now, like a lot of our clients are in this space hedge funds. So one, I would say, I really, especially if your business is in the capital markets, find strategic partners as your first investors. So our first investor and client was Soros. Then we also brought on Jefferies as another investor. So having people that can help you execute in the market and validate what you're doing is really, really key. But what we've tried to do is find ways to insert ourselves as like a toll in the road within the ecosystem. So in securitizations, we get paid in the deal, as opposed to going and trying to face every investor as much. But it's really a touch and go process where you got to really first feel out where you're adding value, try to scope what that value is worth, and then find a delicate way to kind of charge people for it. And then get them to pay their bills. It's amazing. They're cheap, and then they're delinquent too, and you gotta go after them.
I guess for us, we're working with banks, lenders, online lenders that are specializing in small business loans. So we actually decided not to charge our customers. We're charging only the members who are coming on it. And we're charging them a flat fee per month instead of doing a per transaction. Because that's too hard, and that takes too much of our time to go through the entire process from when they came in all the way to see whether they got the loan or not. That doesn't serve our model well. For us, it's more making the right match, because we're also going to work with financial service providers and insurance companies, not just banks. So it's just a flat fee for everyone. And actually, our pricing model is such, everyone that we talk to and everyone who's putting money into our membership, they actually find it very low, they find it very reasonable, and we have had no pushback so far.
So it's a flat fee to the user of it, to the business that uses it.
To the small the business.
Yeah,
it's a flat fee, because we don't want to charge, because otherwise it's too long a process.
Got it.
That doesn't work.
Any others? Then I think we are back at 1:15, and then there's the panel on blockchain and Bitcoin innovators. So,